Nerd Morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and today on the Nerd Morning Show, we're going to be talking about Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I have already done a spoiler-free version of a book review for you guys about this book. I'll make sure to have a link to that in this. If you guys have not read the book, watch that video. Don't watch this one until you have read it. We're going to be talking a lot of spoilers and breaking down a whole bunch of things. I hope you guys will really enjoy this video, but it's one to be watched after you have finished the book. So if you haven't already read the book, stop now, come back, but stop now, and we will catch back up together when you've read the book. For those of you who have read the book, let us dive in to some of the crazy, amazing things that we've learned and discovered through this book, and just kind of dive into some of the interesting things that we've experienced because of what we read. So the book starts off really interesting, introducing the fourth bridge and the potential for future air combat. I think this is going to be a really, really big thing because there's so much conflict, so much war in this planet, and we're going to be seeing that type of aerial combat being, I think, a bigger part of the future because of the things that we're discovering and opening up. And I just think that's really interesting. That's super cool. There are three major focuses to this book. There's the group that's going off to Lasting Integrity to try to find more honor spren. There's the Dalinar Warfront story and the things that are going off there. And the major part of this book really is the events that are happening in Urithiru. So let's go through each of these, some of the associated characters, and some of the takeaways that we can have off of some of these things that are going on. So Lasting Integrity is in the cognitive realm. We have the team with Shallan and Adolin that are going into Shadesmar and are exploring what's options that they have to be able to bridge the gap and make it so they can have more honor spren, because again, they're decided that aerial combat is going to be a big part of the war. And with honor spren, they can have lashings and being able to fly as part of their combat strategy, and they're also just looking for more spren to partner up with in order to be able to have these radiant abilities to defeat Odium, which is their big goal right now. They are talking pretty openly about how the cognitive realm and through what they know as Shadesmar is the way you can get and travel to other planets. And honestly, the Cosmere is opened up, where I think previously you didn't have to know too much about the other planets, but now the other planets, the other magic systems, things like that are a bigger part. In fact, some of the intro opening couple of lines that they have at the beginning of some of the chapters, or all of the chapters, some of those are from different deities and things like that from other planets, and we see stuff from Scadrial and powers from other planets where they're doing lashings and breath and dealing with metals, and we're even seeing things from the other planets that are very, very unique to them coming in and playing a big role in the book. And I think that's super cool, but it definitely means that we have to be reading all of the books in order to be able to piece all of those different things together. One of the big things that we found with Shallan's story is the Ghostbloods are a Cosmere-sized group. They are interplanetary, and they have goals that are not necessarily in line with the ideal things for Rashar and protecting them all from Odium. And Shallan's story is a really good place to kind of dive in and talk about with specific characters. Shallan has this multiple personality, and it's not necessarily multiple personality disorder in the ways that we see it. There's some clear differences, and they make sure to emphasize that this is different and unique, but they also have a lot of different parallels with that. And in this one, she is trying to have more fracturing of different personalities, and also working to try to keep herself together as she has some of these different aspects of who she is that have splintered, and we get to see her deal with her past and ultimately to be able to become again together and to be Shallan. And I thought that was really, really cool. That was one of the biggest accomplishments and growths for her as a character, I think, that we've seen in the last maybe 2 books. And I thought that was super cool. Shallan honestly didn't have as big of a role as I was expecting in this book, but I think that's okay. Like, we got some really good things out of her. It was cool to see her more as a spy, to see her organization as she's training and progressing. And it was interesting to see her and her relationship with Adolin as it has grown and progressed. Now, Adolin is so cool. He is such an amazing character. And from being kind of this, like, a little bit of a brat, you know, at the very beginning, and, you know, ultimately a good guy, to just being a stalwart good guy now. Like, he is one of the best, I think, in the series, and that's even with his weaknesses and also some of his big failings that he's had in the past. I'm just like, he is the man. Anyways, Adolin is really attached to his sword. He feels like there is some really big connections that he has with that, and he doesn't want to abandon that in order to become a Radiant. And I think that that's interesting that he's got such devotion to this blade. And when they're going into Shadesmar, of course it is a Deadeye Spren, and we see that this Spren is doing things that other Deadeyes cannot do, and when they go into the trial in order to be able to see if he can win over the other Honor Spren, and he also tries to defend himself as a person, but also humanity against the Spren. And like that moment when his Spren says, "This was our choice, this was our sacrifice, don't take away our sacrifice," I thought changed our whole perspective of the Requients and what happened in the past. Because at first they're like, oh, it wasn't maybe something that happened all at once, and maybe it happened over time, and they were kind of trying to explore and understand that. And pretty much his friend says that it was something that we chose together, we had our reasons for this sacrifice, and you can't take away our sacrifice because it was something that we chose, and don't use that to cushion or grab hold of your own fears. And I think that that was just a really poignant thing. And I think in the past, in real life and real things, that sometimes we cling on to certain things that happened in the past, or past grievances or other types of stuff, in order to justify other grievances or fears or things like that. Like, there's parallels to that we see in ourselves in our own lives all the time, I think, and I thought that was just an interesting parallel. And I really hope that his Deadeye Spren becomes a full, vibrant, living Spren again, and that Adolin becomes a shard bearer because of that. And we don't know what order of Spren it is yet, but I don't know. It could be interesting to see what type of Radiant Adolin could become. And I think it really opens up the door, though, that Spren could be healed, and I think that's a huge thing for us moving forward and the potentials that we have. The other big story, again, going back with the Dalinar War, he's at the war front and dealing with things. We have, of course, Taravangian. We know he's going to betray them, and he ultimately does, and this is super inconvenient because they can't go and help Yorthiru, and Odium has been playing these multiple fronts in order to have that advantage. But also Taravangian sees that he can't see everything in the future, but he does see that the blade that Szeth has is a god killer weapon. And I thought that discovery is huge because like that just changes the battlefront when you have an actual blade that can kill the shard gods. And that was obviously a huge thing all the way to the very end when Taravangian manipulates Szeth and gets him so he can use the blade and kills Odium and then ascends to godhood, and how that was like a part of the plan for the whole time. And that was, I think, crazy because now we have this links of this other divinity that we haven't really seen very much of, and how she's tinkering and doing stuff where it's kind of been this honor versus odium for this whole time, but that's not the case anymore, and the players have definitely shifted. And I have no idea how that's going to really play out. Taravangian seems to not want to reveal that he is the new odium god, and in fact, in the very end with Hoid, makes a big effort to like keep that hidden, and we'll touch on that ending with Hoid a little bit later. But wow, that was all of that was super crazy, super interesting, and very worth like talking about. And I can't talk about everything in this video because I'll just be talking forever. So we're gonna keep on moving forward, and we're gonna touch on Szeth. Szeth had a big like discovery with his homeland being attacked and possibly a lot of them killed or annihilated, and he looks like he's going to be going forward to the fourth ideal and go on himself on a quest. And right now he's been this servant of Dalinar, and he honestly hasn't been the servant of Dalinar for very long. I was expecting him to maybe be in that position for 2, maybe 3 books and get like a position where he is like trusted, he's a like maybe respected to a degree. Everyone pretty much fears him and or has kind of hidden him away so far, but we might skip all over that type of story arc, and he might go straight into his fourth ideal and going on that quest. And I think that it just offers some interesting stories, but I think I would have maybe wanted to see a little bit more in future books to do with Szeth gaining his trust from the other people and trying to be able to acclimatize with society in some ways. But we might not see that at all, and this could lead him on a very good path or a very bad path, and he doesn't yet know that he possesses a god killer, and that by itself is interesting because he now holds the most powerful blade in the Cosmere that we're aware of, and certainly the most dangerous. Okay, moving down, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time in Yorthiru with Navani, Venli, Caledon, and all of those guys there. So, okay, I guess we'll start with Caledon for a little bit. Caledon really opens up the doorway for a lot of the different like themes throughout the stories, and Caledon has been an individual with mental health battles throughout the entire series. They've emphasized and discussed how he essentially has depression with the rainy seasons that they talked about. He always gets sadder there, and that's kind of like seasonal depression. He also with this battle shock, which is like PTSD, and then just simply just having depression and having the challenge of being able to get up every day. And I thought they did a really good job dealing with some of those issues. And I think that these issues are pretty sensitive and also hard to be able to write and write well and write correctly. And also, everyone's personal experiences are going to be a little bit different. And I think that should give a little bit of leeway or forgiveness to if some of the characters and their experiences with some mental illness issues are a little bit different than what we would necessarily say is totally accurate or true. But honestly, it sounds like Brandon Sanderson did a lot of effort in order to try to be able to have things accurate and respectful and kind of that open, healthy discussion. And I thought that was really mature as well as valuable, because we've been leading through that throughout the whole series. And Caledon is going through some of the most lowest points that he can have, and with Odium giving him these nightmare visions and other types of things that we see in this story, there is so much more that's pushing on him that's beyond necessarily just him dealing with the mental struggles that he personally has to deal with at a daily basis. And that's, I think, worth note. But I thought it was really interesting as well that Syl begins to remember her old life and her old partner, and she has discovered sorrow, and she's discovered depression. And there's a difference, I think, between overall just having a traumatic experience and feeling depressed, feeling loss, and going through that, as well as simply depression as a mental illness and a symptom that you, or I guess an illness itself that you have to deal with. And Syl kind of has that other side where she's found that she has had a significant loss and she's dealing with that. And how on either situation, having that strength, having that support is such a powerful thing. And with Caledon going in and for a little while becoming a surgeon and a healer, and then discovering that he has some new ideas about how to deal with people with mental illness and putting them in support groups and different things like that, was really, really cool. And I thought significant for the development of those ideas in the overarching theme of the book, which I think that was really, really the main thing that I thought was the theme. Other things that we had was that beautiful moment where he swore the fourth ideal after he had lost Teft, and he was so barbaric at that last fight. I was so blown away by that. And then essentially jumping off the cliff of the side of Urithiru and giving up, but then not giving up and having that vision with his brother was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And I got choked up. Totally got choked up. And seeing also with that, him swearing the fourth ideal, actual shard plate, living shard plate, was awesome. That was so cool. And that's something we've kind of imagined and wondered about since the very beginning, when we learned that there were living shard blades and how those were different and unique than regular shard blades. Then we were shard plate has got to be interesting and different and more powerful or meaningful than what shard plate is after it's been with a dead, from a dead spren. And wow, totally different, super, super cool. And I thought that was just awesome to see him having to struggle with his own things, and then also seeing him being so limited in his abilities. And when someone gets more and more abilities and power, you have to be able to put boundaries on that in order for him to have meaning in his challenges. And they've done that to him multiple times, where they've given him abilities and taken his abilities away. And I think I'd like to see some new ways to see that, maybe have him fight bigger, maybe it's bigger villains, and rather than having his abilities simply just always being taken away. But it worked really well for the story. It was fun. Other people around him was really, really interesting. With Dabid, we learned that he has other type of mental illness and isn't necessarily a mute, but has chosen not to talk because of him being able to essentially hide under the concept of having shell shock instead of being maybe a little bit slower in his thinking. And I thought that was really interesting, and I just loved Dabid and the way that they showed how stalwart, how good he was, and how willing he was to sacrifice even when those situations were very hard for him. I just grew to love him so much more in this book than I had in any other of the books with him in it, which was since the very, very beginning. With Teft, oh my gosh, absolutely heartbreaking. What a sad thing. But it was amazing to see that he was able to overcome his struggles, and it wasn't that he was saying that he wouldn't ever struggle in the future, even though he died, but that he was able to claim his happiness, claim his choices, and forgive himself, and that no one could take that away from him, even if they killed him. And that was beautiful and so sad to see him be killed, and that was crazy, but also I thought done in a really good way, and it's going to really open the ways for other characters to grow, and I'm going to miss Teft. I'm going to miss Teft. With her edge dancer, Lift, I love her character. She's so funny. She's so, playful. Getting her captured, having her deal with that, seeing her starting, healing other people and growing as a character to a little bit, but we didn't get a lot of time with her. But seeing her possibly paralyzed, give her some Stormlight fast, guys. I was super worried about her. We don't really see the end exact condition for how she's going to be in the future. Hoping good things. Rlain had one of the most interesting story arcs, I thought, for the whole book. And Rlain was not a major character, but he had some really important moments with him essentially almost being forced to partner with a honor spren, and then saying, I don't want to be forced into a situation like that. I want to be accepted for my own merits and my own values. I thought that was super cool, super powerful. And so he's a regular guy still working through, and him wanting to be accepted for who he is. And then after, Venli comes out as a Radiant, being chosen as well as a Truth Watcher and being accepted like that was super awesome. I thought it was interesting as well, though, with Navani's story and him almost becoming a bondsmith. Was that fair for him? He gets to be a Radiant, but he almost was a bondsmith. Was that better? Was that a better fit for him? But I don't know. I feel like him being a part of his people and the other listeners being able to be Truth Watchers, he's going to be a part of his community again, and I think that's going to be something that overall in the future is going to be really, really fulfilling for him and really, really positive for him. Him in the future, he's probably going to have a bigger and bigger role, kind of how maybe Venli, her initial role in the beginning of the series was really, really small, and then she's grown and progressed until she was a major character in this book, and that was super cool to see her grow and progress, and I think we're going to be seeing that with Rlain. He's going to become a bigger character. The big two characters that were new and that we had a lot of exploration for was with Venli as well as Navani. Now let's talk about Venli for a little bit first. Venli, we get a lot of story with her and her sister. We get a lot of backflashes, and I wasn't totally aware of how significant her role was in the destruction of her people. I mean, we talked about it. We have scenes in the other books with her there, but going through that in her perspective and seeing all of these scenes was really, really interesting. And I liked that we got to see her in her worst, And then everything that she's going to progress from afterwards is going to be her overcoming those low points and her opening up and like explaining all of that to R'laine and seeing R'laine's shock and his horror and his disgust. I thought was really, really interesting and profound. But then they also seem to have some type of unity and connection, and because he sees that she's moving beyond that and that she's becoming a new person. And I think people becoming a better version of themselves is a big additional theme of this series, and I think that's awesome. Her whole story was essentially her being pushed and prodded and encouraged to be a actual Radiant and coming out as a Radiant and fighting out against Odium and the servants of Odium was a really big thing, and I think that it had a really nice payoff. And we had essentially, though, the growth of her character was do it, finally did it. And there wasn't a lot of build, there wasn't a lot of conflict in her story at the current time, but all of her backflashes and those types of things really was what grew her character, and I thought that worked out really well. Navani, this was, I think, more than anything else, Navani's story. She has been kind of this patron, and she's seen herself as this patron of great minds, and in this book we get to see her not only being a patron of great minds, which we do, but also being a scientist and a discoverer all on her own. And she had this belief because of the kind of the abusive relationship that she had before, that she did not believe that she could do those things. She felt like she was just a patron and that she couldn't really have her own discoveries, and she was pushed in this box and she believed this box, and we get to see her break out of that, and I thought that was super cool. Her exploring with the different tones and with light and doing all these different experiments, I thought was really cool. And when they talked about the tones, like, I was thinking, oh my goodness, there are other planets that the sound had a big relationship to how they interpreted and the world. Like iridescent tones is a thing in, I think, Warbreaker, and the tones like that were a big part of earlier books where they talked about sounds and their relationship to the shapes of different cities. And here we've discovered new tones. Also with having pure tones for the different divinities was really interesting, and seeing how they could blend those together as well, like with Honor and Odium, making the new sound or the new tone Rhythm of War, and how that was able to deal with Odium and like be this catalyst or building point for other things was really, really cool. And I love seeing those discoveries with Navani. Also, her discussions and relationship with the I guess the spirit of Urithiru was super cool, and seeing her become a bondsmith was really interesting because there's a serious love-hate relationship there that became something more. Moving farther along, talking about Hoid. Hoid was interesting in this book because we actually got to see real perspectives from him. Having him being the voice of the story instead of just a participant in the story was really interesting, and he is playing such a bigger role here than in any other of the worlds that he's visited, and that was cool. He talked about him having different abilities. We learned about his spren, which was cool because now we know that he is radiant, and we kind of thought things like that and assumed that. Also, we know that he's gathered and acquired other abilities on different planets, possibly in preparation for what he's doing now. And one of the things that we saw is that when Taravangian is Odium and he's tricking him, he like pretty much plays the whole that whole meeting a second time after he like wipes out some of his memory by destroying his breath that he had acquired previously. And I thought that was shocking, that was scary. And Hoid, like, I can't tell if I want him to have all the different powers or not, but that was shocking to me. And the whole ascension of Taravangian just blew my mind. Guys, there's so much more to talk about. I haven't touched on a ton of characters and a ton of key points, and like, there's just so much here. But those were some of my big thoughts that I had, my big takeaways, some of the things that I can initially talk about. I probably and possibly will have more discussions or conversations about this book. I thought that Rhythm of War was a fantastic book. I really, really enjoyed it. Hopefully this discussion was interesting for you guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I would really love to hear what your reactions were, different things that you maybe saw a little bit differently than me. And, you know, I'll be enjoying that dialogue as well with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you guys next time.